Hello, I'm Jonathan Moyes, Head of Investment Research at Wealth Club, and today I'm with Dominic Keane of BritBots to talk about their SCIS and EIS funds. Hello Dominic, welcome back to the studio. First off, for those who aren't familiar, can you give us some background to BritBots and your own experience?
Certainly. Well, it's great to be with you today, Jonathan. So my background is as an engineer and an entrepreneur. So I started my career in early stage venture capital and then built up a software company which I exited about a decade ago now. And having done that, I really wanted to get back into kind of personal passion of mine, which is sort of robotics and AI. So I started the BritBots funds probably 7 or 8 years ago now, and we've been running them since then, and are close now to have invested in 50 companies into our various fund offerings.
So we're here today to talk about the startup and scale-up funds, SCIS and EIS. What do they aim to do for investors?
Yes, well, as you say, we've got two fund offerings in the market. First of all, our startup fund, which is predominantly an SCIS fund, which is investing in companies at their very early stages. So we're pretty much the first capital that comes into some of the most exciting sort of embryonic startups in the robotics and AI space. And then once those businesses have matured over a couple of years and started to get some traction and demonstrated their management capabilities, then we follow them with a scale-up fund, which is a pure EIS fund that helps those businesses obviously scale up after a few years.
Yeah. And so how many companies can investors expect in the SCIS and EIS funds?
Yeah, so typically in both funds, we tend to invest between 8 and 12 investments in any single fund portfolio so that investors can get a really nice breadth of company types and industry types and different sort of profiles of founder and management so that they have that sort of diversification in the fund portfolio.
Sure. And we had some news in 2023. The amount that you can invest in a SCIS qualifying company has increased. Mm-hmm. It's gone up to £250,000. Does that affect the way you invest? Does it affect the companies that you're backing?
Yeah, actually, I mean, from almost a sort of regulation and legislation point of view, this last year has been amazing for us because, as you say, first of all, the SCIS limit has gone up to 250,000, and also the Chancellor's recent statements on full expensing for capital machinery means that business buyers are more able to invest in robotics than they ever have been before. So both of those sort of two changes have significantly improved our sort of landscape for investing, but particularly with respect to the SCIS limit, it's good because it means we can effectively build rounds of up to about £500,000 at the first stage of capital, which is sort of enough money typically for a team of founders to operate for 18 months to 2 years to really build out their product and get into the market before they need to even think about raising further capital.
So what are you looking for in these companies that you're backing?
I guess the key things for us are brilliant sort of eye-catching technologies which are matched with dynamic and sort of positive founder groups. So we really like it when we find a combination of a kind of technical founder who's teamed up with a kind of experienced commercial leader so that they can get that balance between creating fantastic technology and also sort of taking it out to the world and deploying it.
And I guess before you invest in these companies, you've got to find them. How do you source these investments?
Yeah, our investments typically come from 3 directions, I'd say. So probably about 1/3 of the investments are kind of university spin-outs, companies which have come from robotics or computing departments in British universities. The second third is essentially just kind of people from our network, so entrepreneurs that we know who are active in the space or people who've previously, found and sold businesses who want to do a new thing which sort of fits within our profile. And then thirdly, we get a certain amount of activity just as direct approaches from people with great ideas who need capital to build their businesses.
Do you find your brand helps with becoming a destination? If you're an entrepreneur looking for that first check and you're running a AI business, Are you now recognised as a destination for some of these entrepreneurs, would you say?
Yeah, I would say that's been a very encouraging development over the last few years in that, we really have a sort of well-known branding to come to if you're starting an early stage robotics or AI company. So it's always hard to know exactly how much proportion of the potential deal flow sort of crosses your desk. But I would, like to think that it's a pretty high proportion, and we're in, a lot of those formative conversations for the best companies.
Sure. So turning to the current environment, it's been a pretty difficult environment for some, but for others in AI and automation, it feels like it's been a fairly buoyant time. How's the current environment affecting the companies you back and your funds?
Yeah, well, obviously the sort of fantastic development for us this year has been all the sort of media hype that has gone around sort of ChatGPT and generative artificial intelligence. And whilst we have a bit of an exposure in that kind of area itself, that sort of positive sentiment has extended across a lot of the AI and robotics landscape into sort of adjacent fields. So that has really raised the profile of a lot of our companies. And I guess certainly the environment for industry adoption of automation technologies appears to be significantly improving. And that's probably driven both by this sort of more positive or awareness of what AI can do for a business, but then also just the underlying kind of demographic and economic drivers that businesses need to find productivity. It's hard to find particularly low-skilled staff, and so robotics, automation, AI are kind of essential elements to the businesses of the future.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
And so recent examples, you've always got some good examples of companies you've backed recently. Have you got any today?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, two businesses that we've backed over the last 12 months or so that are doing really well are a business called Vision Intelligence, which is working in high value manufacturing, particularly in aerospace manufacturing. And effectively it's a vision system that works with a manual assembler of parts and goods to check their quality levels as they build products. So typically, if you're building a part for an aeroplane, a defect in manufacturing can be enormously expensive if it gets further down the stream. And this effectively is a sort of QA system which stops those sorts of problems happening and consequently saves these manufacturers a lot of money. And for a very early stage company, the pickup from significant global aerospace companies very quickly has been really phenomenal. And there's a very strong founder in that company, so we're very positive about that one. And then another really interesting company that we've become involved with this year is a business called Samudra Oceans, which builds robotics for sort of kelp and seaweed farming around the world. So obviously the markets for aquaculture products like this is growing substantially. They're a great sink of carbon, and also just the markets where people want to use seaweeds both for cosmetics and foods are increasing a lot. So this technology really makes seaweed farmers much more productive and potentially is a catalyst for the amount of seaweed grown around the world to scale up significantly. Yeah.
And so turning to the existing portfolio, looking at some of the more established holdings, any good examples there? Any key highlights?
Yeah, I'd say what has been pretty edifying for me over the last year is this number of the businesses have really transformed into significant players operating at scale. So we've got businesses like Rad Propulsion, which make electric engines for boats, and their market is picking up massively, and they're essentially a global leader in their area. Another business I would call out is QLM Technology, which is a methane detection device. And you probably heard recently there was a huge global treaty on fugitive methane emissions, and they're right at the center of solving that massive global problem. And then another business, Albion Technologies, which creates very, very smart AI-driven energy storage systems for energy grids. Again, is taking really massive steps forward in terms of deploying its technologies all around the world. Yeah.
And so to what extent do you get involved in some of these companies?
Yeah, so I guess fundamental to our concept, particularly when we're working with early stage companies, is to be very, very involved with the management teams and use our experience and sort of expertise of growing robotics and AI companies kind of from day one up to the point where they're looking sort of much more like conventional sort of operating growth businesses. So we help them to get their boards in place. We help them to build really strong financial and commercial disciplines so that they can, take the risk out of growing their businesses. And then once, these businesses have rolled on for a few years, we tend to then kind of take a slightly more sort of backstage approach and, let, a more professional board step in and run the businesses. Yeah.
So potentially getting them, I guess, investment ready for that next big investment round that might come along.
Definitely, it's investment ready, but actually probably more importantly is getting them commercially ready to really go at these significant markets that they're chasing, with sort of determination and momentum.
Add some passion.
Yeah.
Some of that keen passion.
Exactly.
So turning to exits, any exits in the portfolio?
Well, I mean, actually, we've got a very exciting program which is underway at the moment, which will help give either a partial or complete exit to some of our early stage portfolios. So portfolios that were invested 6 or 7 years ago. We have a program that we're just working through, which will allow those investors to exit their portfolios if they wish to do so. And more information will become available on that in 2024.
Very good.
Yeah.
And so turning to risks, for every 10 companies you back, how many are you expecting to fail? How risky is this?
Yeah, well, particularly when we look at our startup fund, so the predominantly SEIS fund, undoubtedly this sort of investing is high risk investing. And we would, expect in any portfolio, a handful of the businesses that are backed to fail, within the first years. Unfortunately, that's inevitable just because these things happen in businesses.
Yeah.
So saying, what has been very positive about the founders historically that we've worked with is they have phenomenal sort of resilience and grit to keep their businesses going. And quite often we've seen in the past, businesses which have, maybe sort of struggled a little bit for the first few years can actually find a niche or find a way of operating and then subsequently sort of build out their businesses. And that's a sort of another characteristic of these sorts of investments. You get some that might fail quickly, you get others that sort of bump around a little bit and then find what they can really focus on and then sort of scale up from there. And then obviously you get some that, hit it first time and are able to get that sort of quick growth, as we talked about with Vision Intelligence or Samudra.
Yeah, okay. And so finally, to sum up then, Dominic, for those that want to invest in a SES or EIS fund this year, why should they invest with BritBots?
Well, I don't think there's any better time to be investing in AI and robotics and automation. These technologies are, ready to move into the mainstream economy in a really significant way. And we've seen the amount of capital and the amount of exits in this space increased substantially over the last year. So it's a great place to invest your money if you're looking for, high returns, albeit with a significant amount of risk.
Dominic Keane of BritBots, thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you're watching on YouTube, please press like and subscribe to the channel for more.